Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's joint webinar with MuleSoft and Nous Infosystems on core banking integration solution using MuleSoft. My name is Kajal and I will be your host for the webinar. Now, before we begin our session, I would like to inform you all that you can type in your questions during the webinar and we will try and answer all of them at the end of the session. Next slide. Now to talk about the agenda of this webinar, in this webinar, we will be talking introduction of Nous and MuleSoft, also be talking about market overview, MuleSoft capabilities for financial services, Nous accelerators for core banking integration. We will also be doing a live demo of our core banking integration solution and taking up questions at the end of the session. Now, before we begin, I would like to introduce Nous Infosystems, which is a leading global IT service provider delivering innovative technology solutions to customers across industries. With more than 2 decades in the technology business, we have enabled many Fortune 500 companies and SMEs to achieve digital excellence through testing and quality engineering services. We have served many customers across the globe in business verticals, including banking and financial services, insurance, healthcare, life sciences, retail, and manufacturing. MuleSoft is a Salesforce company. As of 2021, it has been named a leader for the 6th consecutive time in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for Enterprise iPaaS and Full Lifecycle API Management. MuleSoft platform unifies areas of integration, APIs, monitoring, security, automation, and marketplace. Now let's know our speakers. So for today's webinar, we have Srini, EVP Client Solutions at Nous Infosystems, Sachin, Practice Lead for Enterprise Integration, Nous Infosystems, Prashant, MuleSoft Architect, Nous Infosystems. Along with them will be joining us Rick Mason, Lead Solution Engineer at MuleSoft. Now let me please invite Srini to provide the context for this webinar.
Thank you, Kajol, for the kind introductions. Srini here. A very good morning to you all and appreciate taking time to join us today in this key webinar. Great to be a part of this webinar. Let me highlight some of the key points that led us to create this Nous accelerator on MuleSoft platform. If you look at back, the global financial services market is roughly at 118 billion USD and expected to grow phenomenally to 282 billion by 2031. This is really significant. A recent study shows that roughly 35% of the spent for today's financial services are related to organizations that are directly related to APIs and API-related implementations with the open banking and the several initiatives. Another interesting data point highlights that organizations are spending roughly 4 billion annually on an average to make these custom integrations work, even at the very rudimentary levels. Yet, in reality, many financial institutions today are struggling with disjointed legacy systems, and effort needed to integrate them is monumental, especially with the custom developed code by high-cost developers or unavailability of skilled resources, which magnifies the problem. As per MuleSoft analysis, 70% of customers say connected processes are very important to winning their business, yet we see 55% of consumers believe banks provide a very disconnected experience in this digital age. Frequent mergers and acquisitions makes these integrations even more chaotic and complex, as we all know. Hence, it is not surprising that financial institutions are struggling to get customer 360-degree view, which is a basic business need, yet seems to be a distant dream. The digital transformation delivery gap is widening day by day and making this nearly impossible. At Nous, we understood this, and we have partnered with MuleSoft to develop a set of template-based accelerators, which will provide a low-code solution to this banking industry-wide problem. MuleSoft, with its world-class products and integration solutions, along with Nous industry knowledge, innovation mindset, and we're the perfect partners to create these accelerators. The solution with automated code generation feature provides digital agility, faster time to market, and over 40% lower TCO. I'm really excited once again to welcome you all to this two-part webinar in which we will give you insights into this game changer solutions developed by Nous on top of MuleSoft platform to address the customer 360-degree view and similar important business use cases. Now, let me hand over to Rick for additional insights and his views on this. Over to you, Rick.
Thank you very much, Srini. Before I get started into my content, I've got a slide that I want to show the audience, and I'm looking for audience participation. Can anybody tell me, perhaps in chat, what do you see on the screen? Anyone? Just to do a little level setting. If you will go in your chat box and type something in. Anybody have an idea of what is on the screen? We don't have any engineers in the room. Code. That's a great answer. That was from Srini, and that's correct. But what I want to posit for you today is it's more than code. What it actually represents to me and in my career and the things that I've done in the past is simply money flying out the window. Because every time a developer has to write all of this, there's all sorts of other things that goes with it, testing, technical debt, all of that. And the money just keeps adding up the more that you have to write this. Now, we've got a way to not write so much code. We're never going to be in a place where a developer does not have to write some code sometimes, but we are in a world where the more code he writes, the more expensive it gets, the more code that she writes. Can we move on to the next slide? So I want to paint a picture. Okay, cool. So at the bottom of the slide, what you see is a typical enterprise landscape, as it were. And it doesn't have to be Salesforce at the top. That's a system of engagement. It could be a web portal. It could be ServiceNow. It could be Workday. It could be anything. Everything in today's world involves integration. So what is it that you do? You go to that code. In the next slide, what you see is you see the next slide, please. Click next. So what you see is you see that you have developers in each one of these systems working and writing all that code to connect these systems together. What happens though when we need a new system of engagement? One more slide, please. Let's say that we have to do a web portal that connects to all the same systems. Now you've got a different set of developers in the next slide that has to write all of this code in the next slide. And what happens now if we need to go onto another system? Maybe we have to do a mobile portal as well. That means Kotlin, that means Swift. In the next slide, now you've got to do more code for that system as seen on the next slide. So you created this world where you have all these developers writing this code, and it works to a certain extent. On the next slide, you'll see that you get speed, but the key is that you get speed the first time. It's not really very efficient, and it's not very agile, and I'll tell you why. On the next slide, what happens if we have to replace one of those systems? On the next slide, all of that code that we wrote has to be thrown out. Let's go ahead and replace it on the next slide with another system. And now we're back to where we started, writing new code as seen on the next slide. And again, next slide again, and one more time. So we've got the speed in silos. We're not very efficient. We're not agile. And what's more, on the next slide, what we're doing every time we do this on the next slide is we're adding technical debt. There is a better way. Let's go to the next slide. This is a typical engagement that we might be looking at if we were to go in and need to create a customer 360, the digital place that we're all going to that was accelerated by the COVID pandemic, and it's not slowing down. It's going to do nothing but accelerate. And you've got all of this mess in the background of all these different silos that are writing this code. And typically what happens in a banking engagement, for instance, is we may have a merger, and you'll see that on the next slide. What are we doing is we're on the next slide. There we go. We're adding even more complexity as we move along. Like I said, there's a better way. So let's go to the next slide. There is a better way. So the problem is that the IT development teams say, and we're talking about this, say that the speed of digital transformation has increased over the last 5 years. COVID, it's all brought us to it, brought us to this point. We all expect a seamless digital experience when we bank, when we do anything nowadays. But because of all the problems that we stated before, only 35% of IT development teams said they're actually able to deliver on their projects in that same time period. Let's move on. We have worked with many banking institutions across the whole world, and I want to show you specifically on one of them, and that's going to be the Royal Bank of Canada that you see on the right. Let's see how they did it using the MuleSoft tool set. Move on to the next slide. What they did is they took all of those systems that you saw from my prior slides on the bottom, and they wrapped small APIs around them so that they're easily consumable by other systems. MuleSoft provides out-of-the-box tools that allows you to do this, and I'm very excited because what Nos is going to do is they're going to show you how they built on top of that to make this process even faster. And remember, this is what happened at RBC Wealth Management for one of their particular use cases, and this was customer onboarding. So they wrapped all the lower systems and APIs that could be accessed by any other system that needed to. Let's move on to the next one. And the first thing they built was so that their advisors could talk to the customers, determine eligibility, verify clients through know your customer systems and record consent, all of those things. And that was the first thing they built. Now, what happened was because in that first project, they had done all of this separation of work. When it came to the next one, they didn't have to repeat. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. They added in the ability to get household assets, get all of these things that created this new onboarding experience, but they had already done some of the work that they did in the first project, and then you reused it for the second project. Let's move on to the next slide. Then they were able to add the mobile app and the web app, just like I did before, but this time, everything that they wrote in the process of getting there is reusable. So it greatly increased the time to market for the things that they were developing in this particular use case. Let's move on to the next slide. So here in another form, the light blue at the bottom is that first project they did, project one on the left. You see they streamlined client onboarding, and then they were able to go on to project number two by building just two APIs, leveraging everything else that they built in project one. And when they got to project three, they were able to enhance the client service portal. And what they ended up with was, rather than 2 weeks of client onboarding, they got it down to 24 minutes, while at the same time greatly accelerating their time to market with these projects in the methodology that was used to do so. Let's move on to the next slide. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Nos.
Hey, thank you, Rick. Thank you for showcasing the MuleSoft capabilities. So what we have seen in summary is that accessibility to data, the need to synchronize data between system, and data aggregation are some of the key challenges that we have faced in the financial institution due to the siloed data. Also, what we have understood is that reusable process flows and automation of business processes without coding can improve productivity as well as ensure faster delivery. So, having understood these key problems, let's take a look at our accelerators. So, over to the next slide. Uh, from Rick's presentation, what we have understood is that the problem is a little complex with spaghetti coding and the need to integrate different systems. What MuleSoft has brought in is adding a value. Basically, they have brought in agility. So over to the next. Yeah. So on top of this, MuleSoft has provided its solution, which provides agility, and we can integrate system and data effortlessly using the MuleSoft Anypoint platform. Now, when we introduce Now's accelerators on top of this, along with MuleSoft, over to the next. What we are seeing is that it significantly brings down the cost. We have built pre-built solutions for many of the banking scenarios like Customer 360, data aggregation, data transportation, and most of the automation that we need for business processing without coding. Our accelerators can bring approximately 40% in savings by cutting down the development as well as the testing effort. Now let's focus on our use case for today's webinar about the Customer 360 Accelerator. So over to next slide. Customer 360 is an accelerator for banking and financial institutions built on top of MuleSoft platform by Now. So this accelerator can create API relationships, generate Mule applications based on the API relationship definitions that we create. And these generated Mule applications can fetch data from multiple sources, process it, and make it ready for consumption by dashboards or any other application that needs data. Today in our demo, we will be showcasing how quickly we can fetch customer information distributed across different core banking platforms and products like Play, Salesforce, etc. And see how our auto-generated code making can improve the deployment time. Now let's take a quick look at the architecture of this over in the next slide. So if you see on your right hand side, you are seeing the connectivity layer. So this is a templated connectivity that we are providing for API onboarding. And API onboarding, once API onboarding happens, the aggregation layer takes care of your data fetching from different systems. Also, it does the transformation and can mask the data based on your security and access privileges. Finally, we have the UI layer, which will expose aggregated customer information, and that information can be consumed by any of the dashboards or web pages, mobile applications, devices, etc. The beauty of this accelerator is that you can fetch the customer info without the need to code. Now, let me invite my colleague Prashant to demonstrate this Customer 360 accelerator. So, over to you, Prashant.
Thank you, Sajid. I will be demonstrating the Customer 360 framework. Karthik, if you... So it is our banking solution, the Customer 360, that connects multiple systems and provides the aggregated data. MuleSoft is a significant piece of puzzle here. We have built this solution on top of MuleSoft platform. Our tool allows us to define aggregators and API relations. Once that is done, it generates a MuleSoft application for it and deploys it to the environment such as Cloud Hub. Let me take you to the Customer 360 dashboard. This is the one where the data from multiple systems are aggregated in one place and then showed in the user interface. So quickly, I will go ahead and search a particular customer, Bob Smith. And as you can see, this is trying to connect to multiple banking systems and get data for Bob Smith. It will take a while before it fetches data. But here we can see that right now, the dashboard is blank, although we can see the placeholders, but the data is not present here. This is because there is no solution deployed for this dashboard which can fetch the data. But shortly, we will showcase you how we can create a solution and deploy it to Cloud Hub that will actually fetch data from multiple systems and fill the different part of the dashboards. Our solution will pull data like profile data, bank accounts, transactions, documents, service requests, etc. And these data are scattered throughout multiple systems, but our solution will bring together from systems like Plaid, FIS, Salesforce, custom databases, files, and feed this dashboard. And all of it we will achieve within tens of minutes. So let's go to our API aggregator tool and see how we can build such solution. So this is our API aggregator framework where we will be designing our aggregator definition and API relations. This tool is where we can see all of our aggregator definitions that we have previously defined, like this on the left hand side, and you can find out the specific detail about the aggregators that you have defined on the right hand side. So for example, if I go to this core banking customer 360 aggregator that we have already defined, you can see that a graph appears. You can see multiple nodes here. Each node represents one API. So if I go to contact Salesforce, this actually represents one API that provides the contact data. Similarly, account Salesforce, it is an API that retrieves the account from the Salesforce and gives it to us. So if you want to see the API related to any node, you can just click on it, go to the view related API configuration option, and here a Postman-like UI appears where you can see the configuration, all of the technical details about this API that you need to call this API. Also, you will see the response here, which actually gives us like what kind of response is provided by this API. Similarly, you can see the lines running through these nodes. These lines actually show how these nodes are connected. So for example, if I talk about account Salesforce, there is a line running from contact Salesforce to the account Salesforce. So this is the relationship between them. And if you want to view the relationship, you can easily go here to the view to edit relationship configuration and you can see it. So the left hand side is the account that is coming from the Salesforce and the right hand side is the contact that is coming from the Salesforce. And here are the technical details. But the one thing that we need to showcase here is this. We are actually mapping the account to the contact, the request of the account to the response of the contact. And it is very easy to map. For example, if I want to map it to some other field, I can do that easily. It's a simple click and map. Similarly, there could be multiple fields, tens of fields, and it could be done as easily. So this is a definition that we have already created that will power our dashboard, which we just showcase you in the starting of the demo. But let me go quickly and create a definition, aggregator definition. So it's very easy. For example, let's say I will name it XYZ Bank. And these are some of the technical details that doesn't matter. So as soon as you click on the OK, you will see that your aggregator definition appears here. If you will click on this, you will see that there is no data present. Only the root thing is present. So because this shows that this is the starting point. So let's add a first node that will be our starting point of the aggregation. So let's say we call it contact. And it is asking you to attach an API to this node. So I will simply go and search the pre-existing API, preloaded API into our system. So I will simply go like this. And you can see here, I have selected this API and all of the technical details of this API, the specs have already come in here. And you can analyze it. But as soon as you click on OK, there is a relationship thing that comes. But since the contact is the root, we have nothing to map it to. So I will just go to the OK part and it has created a contact API. Similarly, I will add just one more node to show you how the relationship works. So let's say that I will put account here. And I will again use our existing API so that it is easier. This is something that quickly lets me search through our API repository and fetch it here. So if I will click on OK, it will take me to the relationship diagram where we need to map it. So here we can see that to fetch an account, we actually need to send the account ID. I will remove the default value. And we have seen that, in the account response, in the contact response, actually our account ID appears. So I can simply map this, and that's how the framework will understand how to call the account API and what values to use from the contact API. So it's as simple as that. So similarly, you will see that the two nodes appear now. So you can go as deep as possible. You can create as many nodes as possible. You can aggregate as many APIs as possible. So now we have seen how our aggregator is created. Let's go to this aggregator and see if there is an application deployed for it onto the cloud. This refresh button will actually try to find out if there is an application deployed for this particular definition on the cloud. And if there is no application, it will tell you that, or if there is an application, it will display all the information. So we can see that no application is present on the cloud hub. So we will start a deployment. A deployment actually covers two things. First, it will fetch all the environments and then it will generate an application. If I can show you the tool, right now there is no core banking customer 360 application here, but as soon as we deploy, our application will appear here. So let's start with the deployment. So here you can see that the deployment console has appeared, and now it presents me with all the environment that is present in that AnyPoint platform in our account. So let's go with the dev. But as soon as I click on the dev, you will see that our application has been generated very quickly. And once the application has been generated, it will be packaged, and the packaged application will be deployed to the cloud. Soon we should see the status changing. So right now you can see that this application is being uploaded. So this will take a while since this is a live deployment. But meanwhile, let me take you to the code that it has generated. So I will import this code to our Anypoint Studio, where I can show you around what kind of code our application generates, how robust it is, and what it achieves. So this is like any other MuleSoft application which you can import and simply use. So for example, if I come here, you will see that for all of the APIs, there are separate flows that has been generated. There is proper error handling, proper markers are there to understand what APIs are responding with what data. Then there is framework code, which ensures that everything runs smoothly. Then we have API aggregators, which is the actual code that actually gets the data from multiple APIs and gives it to us in a consolidated manner. So you can see here that multiple APIs are being called. We are fetching multiple children for multiple parents, and similarly, all of these flows are being generated. Also, if you will analyze this application a bit further, you will see that a good amount of resources has been created, and this all of it is generated according to a template that we have rigorously tested, that is fault tolerant, responsive, and has an agile architecture. And this application is, as I said earlier, like any other MuleSoft application. So you can simply look through it. If a problem comes, you can debug it, and you can make the changes and deploy. So the whole process is very organic. Let's go to this screen and see this. So now the status has changed from uploading to deploying. So if I go to my Anypoint platform, you will see that there is actually an application by this name, Core Banking, that is getting deployed. So it will take a while. I don't think, yeah. So it's started now. So you can see that our application is now in the started state, so we can start using it. I will refresh it again just to see if it is able to fetch all of the current deployed information or not. So earlier we saw that there was no application deployed, so it did not fetch anything, but now it should. So here you can see the actual URL that it has deployed our application to, and all of the worker configuration with which it has actually deployed our application. So all of it fetches here, and you can do it multiple times. We have a backup thing. If you want to take backup of any of the aggregator, that is also possible. And this is the test console that we have inbuilt into our system. This is the Postman-like console. If we click on the test, it already pre-populates with whatever information it has deployed our application. You can see that the URL is Core Banking Customer 360 Accelerator. These are few necessary parameters for the data access, and the body part where we need to send one email ID so that it can relate all the other data and give it back to us. So I will hit this URL and let's see what comes out of it. So it is trying to fetch all of the data at once. It is calling our newly deployed solution, and you can see that within seconds it was able to do that. Slowly we can go through this whole payload, and you will see that all of the data is present. So on the top you can see the contact Salesforce is here, which was our first node in our aggregator definition. If you scroll down, you will see the banking account played is here. So this is a bank account that is being fetched from the plate. If you go down, you will see that transactions are being fetched from the plate, right? So a lot of data is being fetched for this particular customer, and all of this we were able to fetch from just one email ID, and it was able to relate the data between different systems. Now this is what will power the dashboard that we showcased to you earlier. this is the data that our dashboard will consume and would be able to present it into a structured format, in a graphical format. So I will quickly close this and let's move to our dashboard thing. So again, I will search the same contact and let's see if it is able to fetch all of the data from our application or not, or from different systems or not. Yeah, right. So now it is able to fetch the data from different systems through our newly generated code. You can see the profile picture is coming, the address is coming, the phone number is coming. Similarly, this dashboard is able to present all of the consolidated balances, liabilities, expenses. Also, it presents to you in the graphical format the expense categories, how much the customer has spent in the recreation. So if I come here, you can see that 13.8K has been spent there. If I say shops, so if you go to the month of the December, you can see that $500 has been spent in this category. Similarly, you can see the expense graph from May to November. So you can see how user has spent his money. In the July, August, and September, he has spent less money than the other months. So similarly, we have different cards of information, and all of this is based on the data that has been just returned by our application. You can see the interests here. Based on the transactions, we were able to do the analysis and find out what are the customer interests. Similarly, what are the favorite merchants? And this could be actually a goldmine of information for the management. A customer care executive can offer the coupons based on Uber or the KFC, and it can engage with each customer in a better way. So that's all. Few more things in the API aggregator framework. This is our API repository, where you can see that all of the APIs has been loaded. Any new API can also be loaded from this screen if you want. Apart from that, you can view the information about any API, and it presents this information in a testing console. So all of the data is here, including the response. Similarly, we have an access manager where we define the users, all of the users and all of the views. And inside the views, we actually define what aggregators are accessible through these views and what APIs are accessible. You can remove the access of any API in any of the view, and it will be effective instantaneously. Also, since this is a MuleSoft application, you can very easily apply policies onto this. So that's all from my side. You have seen we have achieved within an hour what usually takes many weeks across architects, designers, and developers. This tool can reduce efforts significantly and generate growth. Now over to Srini.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Prashant and Kajol. I think it's all about, technology is all about innovation and ephemeralization. Do more with less. I'm really super excited. We saw with any point platform building solution on top of that with the key customer 360, which was always elusive for the banking industry. Get it done, and we are able to finally at least see some light for that particular problem. Now, of course, we can easily extend in the next webinar the JHA templates, which we are going to look at. In addition, lending templates, account management, report generation, we can take many use cases. And my team is going through actually with MuleSoft on different ideas on this. But if you step back and look at it from the presentation, it's very impressive that the framework benefits, as Sajin was mentioning earlier, right? 17% reduction in architecture, 20% reduction in testing, overall 40% lower TCO, and especially very, very, very tailorable to customer business needs. to create the business agility and dynamism, which is very essential to stay relevant and grow in this competitive market scenarios. On the business side, certainly there is a lot of solution which comes faster time to market, and then standardized access of financial data, which is important for the security and compliance, improves data availability within the role-based access and scalability in product services. Of course, all this boils down to the improved customer satisfaction, which is the paramount, which I think everybody is trying to achieve in this, in this digital world, so that customers keep coming back again and again. All these are possible with MuleSoft's Anypoint platform and the solution accelerators done by Nous. And I'm super excited at this point. Kajol, back to you.
Thank you so much, Srini and everyone. That was really informative session, and I'm sure our listeners have enjoyed. We do have a couple of questions to ask. The another question we have is, how is your solution? How is MuleSoft solution? Sorry, how's your solution different from the MuleSoft financial asset?
I'll take that one, Rick here from MuleSoft. So we do have a FINS accelerator, but because we're MuleSoft or Salesforce, we have to be agnostic, meaning that we can't do everything end to end. For instance, in our accelerator, we have a use case that goes from Salesforce, and it's meant to go into one of the financial institutions like FIS or Fiserv. But we can't do that because we have to be agnostic. So instead, on that layer, we've got a database extension that allows you to mock that, but it isn't really real. You, as the customer of MuleSoft, have to do that work. The difference between those info systems and MuleSoft is they are not bound by that. They have all the real world experience with actually connecting to FIS, to Fiserv, to Jack Henry, whatever this system is, and can be succinct about hooking up that system. Does that answer the question?
It does. Thank you so much, Rick, for that. Third question we have is, code is getting auto-generated. How can you debug the code?
Yes, Prashant here. I will take that one. So, as we saw earlier, our tool actually generates some MuleSoft code in a very neat manner. It is a very structured code that our tools generates. So you can simply import it to Anypoint Studio, and you can hit in the local, and you can start debugging it using the Studio feature. Also, it will generate lots of logs when deployed. So you can go to the standard login channels, viewing channels, and you can find out the issue from there.
Thank you. Our listeners would also like to know what happens when the APIs are deprecated or removed.
The template that we have developed, the architecture that we are using, it by design considers the API failures. Since, for example, if you integrate like 20 APIs in one place, some of them are bound to fail. So if some APIs fail, our application detects that, but it does not affect the rest of the application. So the response that you will get will correctly depict that, okay, this API is failing because of this reason, but here is the data from the rest of the APIs. Also, you can go to the Anypoint you can go to our tool. You can simply edit if any API has been deprecated. You can add and load another API, define the relations, and redeploy again the application. So it's very organic in that way.
Okay. What all banking systems can use this solution?
Yeah, so actually it is very agnostic. If you have a banking system that is API enabled, you can use this tool. For example, FIS, Jack Henry, Fiserv, a lot of banking systems have these APIs, and if some doesn't, then MuleSoft is the API enabler. So once we have the API for any system, you can use this tool very easily.
Perfect, thank you. How can we control access and ensure security?
So yes, the access and security. this is a MuleSoft application which is being deployed to the MuleSoft platform. So through API Manager, we have lots of policies available. We have lots of architecture available through which we can control these APIs. Also, we have an inbuilt role-based access too, which can be used to control the data visibility to the callers. So yeah, in the two-part format, one is the inbuilt access layer that we have. On top of that, the MuleSoft platform access layer that it provides through API Manager and policies. We can use that. So this is how we control the access and security to our aggregator applications.
Great. Thank you everyone for joining us today, including our panel and our listeners. We really appreciate you being here. We are overwhelmed with the amount of questions we have received. However, I'm afraid due to time constraints, we will only be able to take these many questions at the moment. Soon we will connect with you all over an email to answer the remaining questions. In the meantime, do take an advantage of signing up for our free evaluation or consultation. For that, you can reach our experts on the mentioned email ID, or you can also write us at info@nowsinfo.com. Once again, thank you so much for joining us today. You all have a great day. Bye-bye.